Well, hello there and welcome back to the channel. My name is James, and here at 20th and 21st Movies, we're about all things cinema. Well, as of the time I'm recording this video, it is getting close to the end of July, which means that we're getting close to the end of this epic July Barnes & Noble Criterion Collection sale and Amazon sale, the 50% off sale that goes on twice a year for Criterion Collection titles in retail. And I tell you what, it's been a great month. I have really enjoyed hearing about everybody's hauls. I've enjoyed my own personal hauls, and I've really enjoyed many of the titles that I've had a chance to watch during this time. And I wanted to come on here as part of my July Criterion Collection sale programming and do a little something around a double feature. So as you may recall, last month I did a double feature for a couple of Jules Dassin films. So I did a review of Brute Force and then a review for The Naked City as part of a Jules Dassin double feature weekend. And what I want to do in this video is something similar, a little bit of an abbreviated version of that, for a couple of films from director Dorothy Arzner. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Miss Arzner's work, Dorothy Arzner is a very pivotal figure in Hollywood as a director. She's one of the most pivotal directors in Hollywood film history. There was a period of time from, I believe, the 1930s from 1930 to the early 1940s where Miss Arzner was the only working female director in Hollywood. So prior to 1930, we were in the silent film era, and at that time there were more female directors. So by the time we got to the 1930s, many of those female directors who were very prominent during the silent era, for a variety of reasons, stopped working, were forced out of the industry. And Dorothy Arzner was the lone remaining female director in the Hollywood system for many years, from 1930 up to the early 1940s. So I wanted to talk briefly about a couple of films in her filmography that have recently entered the Criterion Collection, one last year that I picked up and one that came out very recently this year. And those films are 1932's Merrily We Go to Hell, which is a pretty interesting title. This is a really interesting film from Miss Dorothy Arzner from 1932, and 1940's Dance Girl Dance. So these are two films from Dorothy Arzner that I want to talk about in this Dorothy Arzner double feature weekend video. So first, Merrily We Go to Hell is a film from 1932. It stars Sylvia Sidney and Frederick March. And this film came out in 1932. And what's really notable about that is the fact that this film came out pre-Hays Code. So as many of you may know, the Hays Code, starting around middle of 1934, set a lot of standards for acceptable and non-acceptable content in Hollywood films. What's notable about Merrily We Go to Hell was that this was one of the last films that came out in that pre-Hays Code era. And you see that in some of the content in this movie. So in this film, Sylvia Sidney plays Joan. She's an heiress who marries Frederick March's character, Jerry Corbett. And Jerry Corbett is a reporter, and he's a reporter that has a propensity for the bottle. So he's an alcoholic, and he has a bit of a wandering eye. And you see some aspects of their relationship play out on screen that was considered scandalous, of course, at the time. And so because this film came out in the pre-Code era, they were able to get away with showing some things on screen that the Hays Code would not allow in the future. Things like an open marriage, open alcoholism, things of that nature. This film was able to put out there on the screen in a pretty scandalous way. So this is a really interesting film that I enjoyed watching. It's a pretty enjoyable film from 1932 from Dorothy Arzner called Merrily We Go to Hell. I think Sylvia Sidney and Frederick March put in very nice performances for this film. And it's a nice film from the early 1930s, the early part of the talkie era after the silent era, Merrily We Go to Hell. Now, the second title in this Arzner double feature is a film that I really found interesting, and it's called Dance Girl Dance, and it stars Maureen O'Hara, Louise Hayward, and Lucille Ball in a early performance for the famous I Love Lucy actress. And it's called Dance Girl Dance. It's from 1940, and this is the second film that I'm featuring in this Dorothy Arzner double feature weekend. And this is a very nice film from 1940. So in this film, Dance Girl Dance, Maureen O'Hara and Lucille Ball play Judy and Bubbles. They're both dancers who are trying to find their way, trying to make their big break in the dancing profession. So they're trying to find their way as dancers, and they're competing for the affection of Jimmy, who is played by Louise Hayward in this film. So this is Dance Girl Dance. It's a very nice film from 1940. And for me, the biggest takeaway for me is some of the themes that came through in this film, just the strength of these female characters. And for me, it was really nice to see a younger Lucille Ball in the early part of her career. This 1940 film came out about a decade before the 1951 debut of I Love Lucy. And I believe in 1940, Lucille Ball married Desi Arnaz, her husband, and a decade later, they would start their legendary TV series, I Love Lucy. So for me, that was one of the most notable things that I picked up, is just the opportunity to see a young Lucille Ball in the early part of her career doing her thing. So I really enjoyed that aspect of this film. And overall, this is a pretty nice film from Dorothy Arzner. So together, these are two really nice films that I would definitely recommend if you're looking for something a little bit different. You want to dive into a filmmaker that you may not be familiar with. So these two films represent a very nice primer, if you would, into the work of Dorothy Arzner. And I think for me, the most notable thing to take away from these two releases from Criterion are the special features that talk about Dorothy Arzner herself. I think more so than the films Merrily We Go to Hell or Dance Girl Dance. These are both nice films from Miss Arzner. But for me, the biggest takeaway for these two releases from the Criterion Collection are the features on here, which both of these editions are pretty light on special features. But the features that are on these discs do a really nice job of telling you more about director Dorothy Arzner, about her life, about her approach to filmmaking, about her philosophy of filmmaking, and the influence that Dorothy Arzner had on future filmmakers such as Francis Ford Coppola, who spoke of her very highly in one of the features on one of these discs. So let me tell you a little bit about these supplements that are on these discs. So you have on the Merrily We Go to Hell, you have a 1983 documentary called Dorothy Arzner Longing for Women. And this is a 1983 documentary by Kaja Raganelli and Conrad Wickler. This was a really nice documentary from 1983. It basically chronicled the story of these two German, I think they were German filmmakers or German journalists who traveled from Germany, I believe, to California, to the home of Dorothy Arzner after her death. So Dorothy Arzner unfortunately passed away in 1980 in a car accident. And these two journalists traveled to California to her home. And it's just a wonderful documentary that shows you the inside of Dorothy Arzner's home, shows you her personal effects, her diary, just different aspects of her life. And they talk about Dorothy Arzner as a filmmaker, as a person, as a human being. And it is a really nice documentary that gives you a nice glimpse into Dorothy Arzner's life. So I think that Longing for Women documentary is a very nice documentary to check out. And then you also have a new video essay by film historian Carrie Beauchamp on here. And those two features, I think, do a really nice job on this disc of laying out the life of Dorothy Arzner. Of course, on the inside, nice artwork on the disc. You have a fold out here, and I think that's nice. And of course, inside here, you know, kind of a small fold out, not much in the way of a fold out here. So a pretty small fold out. And of course, inside here, you have the essay Gingerbread Cake and Creme de Menthe by Judith Main. That's an essay in here. And this is a line from the film that is delivered by Frederick March about the creme de menthe that you'll pick up in the film. But this is overall a very nice edition from Criterion. You, of course, get just a couple of special features on here. You get an essay included in the insert here. And it's a pretty nice edition. It's not a stacked edition. I think the movie was pretty nice, pretty entertaining. And I definitely would recommend picking this up, if for nothing else, but just learning more about this incredible filmmaker and her influence in Hollywood during the time that she worked. Dorothy Arzner was a huge influence in the Hollywood system from the late 1920s up to the mid 1940s. So that's definitely worth checking out. You also get a new restored 4K digital transfer. You get that on this disc as well as Dance Girl Dance, and the picture quality of both of these films are pretty nice. So I think they did a really nice job with the 4K transfers, and you get a nice uncompressed monaural soundtrack for both. So I think as far as the technical aspects of video and audio quality, very nice for both Merrily We Go to Hell and Dance Girl Dance. But I definitely recommend for the Merrily We Go to Hell release that you check out that Dorothy Arzner Longing for Women 1983 documentary. That is a very nice personal documentary that really gives you an inside view of what Miss Arzner was like as a person. And they noted that they never got the chance to meet Dorothy Arzner. Katja Raganelli and Conrad Wickler, they never got a chance to meet her in person, but just going through her home and going through and seeing some of her personal effects really made them feel like they could get as close to knowing her as you possibly could for someone that has passed on. So I thought that was a very nice documentary. And then on the Dance Girl Dance, you also get another very nice feature on this edition. So you get an introduction by critic B. Ruby Rich, but then you also get a new interview with filmmaker Francis Ford Coppola. Of course, we know Francis Ford Coppola is the director of the legendary films The Godfather and Apocalypse Now. He was heavily influenced by Dorothy Arzner as a student back in the 1960s. And so you get a nice interview with filmmaker Francis Ford Coppola talking about the influence that Dorothy Arzner had on his life. So I really thought that was interesting. So it just tells you a lot about how influential that Dorothy Arzner was, not only in the time that she worked in the Hollywood system as a director, as an editor, and all the things that she did to fight to make it in a very male-dominated industry in the 1930s, but also the influence that she had on future filmmakers in decades to come who made some of the greatest films of all time. So I thought that was super cool. And then of course you get inside here, you get an essay by critic Sheila O'Malley. You open up the inside here, you get a similar colored theme to the Merrily We Go to Hell. Both of these releases look very similar from a color standpoint. They look, very thematically similar. I like the way that Criterion does that for releases from some of the directors, that they sort of follow a similar theme in the packaging. And so you see here, of course, nice disc art. You see a nice little fold out here. Very nice picture, of course, of Maureen O'Hara and Lucille Ball, the same picture that you see on the cover here. And then on the inside, you Gotta Dance by Sheila O'Malley, which is a very nice essay. And of course, information about the transfer and other aspects of this release. So this is, similar fold out to the Merrily We Go to Hell, not a big booklet or anything. So overall, these are two very nice editions from Criterion of two films from director Dorothy Arzner. From a supplement standpoint, they are both on the slim side, so not a lot in the way of special features, but the features that are on here do a very nice job of fleshing out more about director Dorothy Arzner. And I think both of these films are very nice films, but to me, my recommendation of these editions from the Criterion collection really come down to the power of those supplements that talk about Dorothy Arzner and just how they flesh out her life, her filmmaking career, and just so much about her as a person. I think these features do a very nice job of just fleshing out her career, her filmmaking style, her filmmaking techniques, just everything that she did, not only as a director, but as an editor and other aspects of how she touched Hollywood productions and how she influenced future filmmakers. To me, that is the value of these two editions beyond the movies themselves. The movies themselves are pretty entertaining, pretty nice films, but I think the supplements, as few as they are, the messaging that you get from those supplements and the essays that you get in here that talk about Dorothy Arzner are really what make these recommended titles from me. So I would definitely recommend watching both of these films as part of a double feature. They're both very short watches. I think Merrily We Go to Hell comes in at 83 minutes. Dance Girl Dance comes in at 89 minutes. So these films fall in the category of a nice, easy, breezy watches that you can watch together in one sitting, and they make a really nice double feature together. And I highly, highly recommend them from that aspect. So this is Merrily We Go to Hell from 1932 and Dance Girl Dance from 1940. Definitely recommended as a double feature. And at the time that this video is coming out and that I'm recording this video, we're still at the very end of the July Barnes & Noble Criterion Collection sale. So if you're thinking about what are some titles that I could pick up to sort of round out this July's Barnes & Noble sale, I would recommend considering Merrily We Go to Hell and Dance Girl Dance as titles you might want to consider picking up as we close out this July Barnes & Noble sale. So there you have it. That is my thoughts, very summary thoughts on Merrily We Go to Hell and Dance Girl Dance, two films that have recently come out from the Criterion Collection from legendary, influential director Dorothy Arzner. These are two nice films. I definitely recommend them. They look very nice with their 4K digital transfers, and the supplements that are on here are definitely worth going through and are very educational about the history of Hollywood filmmaking and the history of Dorothy Arzner's impact in Hollywood and women directors in Hollywood in general. So highly, highly recommended from that aspect. So let me know in the comments below, what do you think about these two films? Have you seen Merrily We Go to Hell or Dance Girl Dance? What do you think about these films? And what are some other films from Dorothy Arzner that maybe you've seen that you would like to see in the Criterion Collection or that you would recommend people watch? Let me know that in the comments below. Also, let me know as we enter this last weekend of the Barnes & Noble Criterion Collection sale, what last minute titles are you thinking about picking up as part of this Barnes & Noble sale for July? Let me know that in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll look to see you next time at the movies. Peace.